Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my rankings and reactions to the finals of the fiction prize, the fiction category for the BookTube prize this year, 2020. So I have been participating as a judge this entire year in the BookTube prize as we went through the various rounds, and I was alternating between fiction and nonfiction in the judging pools. And so for this last round, I read fiction, and which was great because the 6 books that were in the finals for the fiction round for the BookTube prize were really excellent books. So let me just give you I have my notes here, so excuse me while I look down, but I'll give you the list for the 6 books that were left for the finals round for fiction. They were 10 Minutes, 38 Seconds in This Strange World, A Single Thread, Girl, Woman, Other, Lanny, The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and Women Talking. Now, you will have already, I'm sure, been aware of the winner for this round of the fiction prize because Robert had posted the announcement video this morning. So I will link that announcement video down below. So first, let me go through my rankings in order from 6 to 1, and then we can discuss where I fell in with the books that actually won the prize. So for the 6th position for me in the fiction round this time was 10 Minutes, 38 Seconds in This Strange World by Elif Shafak. I actually have this hardcover copy that I won from Robert earlier on this year. So this book takes place in Istanbul, Turkey. We're following a woman, Tequila Layla, I'm not sure how you pronounce her name. She is a prostitute and she's just been murdered. And in the 10 minutes and 38 seconds that's left of brain activity, she basically flashes back over her life and thinks about all of the things that's happened to her in her life. So this book is all about family and trauma and found family or chosen family. It's about what women are women and non-binary people in this particular culture, the position that they find themselves in if they are basically exiled from their family. And it was a good book, I thought, but it wasn't great for me. I found it choppy, and I really just felt like it was an average read. For me, the narrative didn't hang together very well. It was all over the place. There are 4 or 5 characters that are like basically this woman's best friends, and we get their backstories as well as the main protagonist's story, and things just became very choppy and hard to understand, hard to follow whose story we were basically talking about at any given time. So for me, this one fell into the 6th place. Not to say that it was a bad book, just wasn't my favorite out of the bunch. And then in number 5 position, we have A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier. This is a historical fiction book following our main character, Violet Speedwell, who is basically a surplus woman. This book takes place after World War I, where there was this very uneven balance of males to females because a lot of men had been killed in the Great War. So Violet is basically chafing under the strictures of being a single woman in this time period, living with her mother. She and her mother don't get along very well. So she ends up taking a job, a secretarial type job, and moving out of her mother's house and basically living in a single room in an apartment, but not an apartment, in a home. She has just a room that she has, but then all the other areas are shared. So it's all about her life during this time period, the restrictions that women basically have to deal with, even though they're expected to work and earn their keep. But yet there's all these other sort of cultural rules that they have to follow as well. I thought it was a really good picture of the limitations for women in this time period in the 1930s. And I really enjoyed the historical aspect of Violet gets involved with a group of women who are embroidering the kneelers and the cushions of the Winchester Cathedral. And that whole part of the story was really fascinating. But for me, this was a good story, but it just never elevated itself to the next 4 books in this grouping for me. I think it was just a good historical fiction novel. I don't think that there was anything particularly special about it that would have elevated it for me to make it higher in this list of other books. So that came in at number 5 for me. Then in the 4th position is a book that I ranked number 1 in the second round of the BookTube prize this year. So that is The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy Lefteri. The Beekeeper of Aleppo is a story of refugees traveling from Syria to escape the war and the devastation of Syria during the war, and trying to make their way to Great Britain to find safe haven. And it is haunting and awful what these people have got to go through. I think in my review previously, I talked about its dreamlike qualities, how you never really knew from the main characters which parts of the story actually were happening or which parts were just part of their trauma that they were dealing with. And I found the writing really beautiful, and especially the nature writing, because our main character was a beekeeper in Syria. And so there's a lot of imagery around beekeeping and the Syrian landscape that I found extremely well done. This was a beautiful, beautiful story, and I really loved it. But that's the problem in the BookTube prize finals, is there's so many good books in this grouping that somebody has to be in 4th place. And for me, this book, even though it was a 5-star read for me, is 4th among the rest of the books that are left in this grouping. So excellent book, just simply somebody had to be in 4th place, and the 3 books above it I liked a little bit more. All right, so in 3rd place for me was Lanny by Max Porter, and now I am just as surprised as anyone that I ranked this book in 3rd place, because I really didn't think this was going to be a book I was going to like. It's sort of experimental narrative, which is not really my favorite. I had no interest in reading it before the BookTube prize sort of put me in the position of having to read it, and I inhaled this book. I read it in 2 sittings on one day. It's a short book. It's extremely propulsive read for me. The main character is Lanny, who is a young boy who is very strange in his knowledge and his sort of awareness of the natural world. He's very in touch with nature. He sort of knows things that he shouldn't really know, or he sees things that maybe he shouldn't really see. And his part of the story is like one part of the story, and then there's these intersection or these interludes from the point of view of a character called Dead Papa Toothwort, who is basically myth come to life. You know, the green man of the forest sort of myth, a creature from legend, and somebody who is just nature, red in tooth and claw kind of thing. And there's some kind of connection between Lanny and Dead Papa Toothwort. And we get points of view from Lanny's mom and dad, and Pete the artist, who is this eccentric artist guy in the village that Lanny ends up going to for art lessons. This all takes place in a small English village, and it's basically a story of modern life colliding with mythology. It's a story about how quick we are as people to assume the worst of each other. It's a story about how we we are allowing ourselves to become disconnected from nature, and that is not a good thing. And so I really loved it. I thought it was a wonderful story. I thought it was an excellently told story. I really am surprised as much as anyone that I enjoyed this as much as I did. And so that one was in 3rd place for me. And then in 2nd place, and I'm very surprised as well that this is only in 2nd place, because when I started, I thought this was for sure going to be my number 1 pick for this round, because it's Women Talking by Miriam Toews. And I read this book actually almost 2 years ago at this point. And I absolutely loved it. I still love it. I still think about it all the time. And this is the story of a group of Mennonites living in Bolivia, who the women have been basically for years drugged and raped by the men in this community. And it's finally come out what's happening to the women. I mean, not just like the grown women, like the girls and the children, the female children in this community have been abused in this way. And so some of the men have been arrested for this crime, and other men in this community have gone off to basically get the men out of jail. And while this is happening, the women in the community are getting together and discussing their options. And their options, as they see it, are to forgive the men for what they've done and just accept it and move on, to stay and fight with the men for what they have done, basically punish them for what they have done, or leave the community, run away, and get as far away from these men as possible. And the discussions that they hold, over the short time period of this book are just heartbreaking and so real, and so just say so much about the position that women so often find themselves in. It really deals with questions of, what options do women have when they're in a situation like this, where their children at risk, when they don't have training or education in order to allow them to support themselves. In this case, the women are illiterate, been kept that way on purpose because of their religion. It is how this book deals with how religion is used to mask horrible things that people do to one another in the name, and to allow people to get away with horrible things because of the religion. I just thought it was compelling and just wonderful. The way that it was written was wonderful. I just loved it to pieces. And I think it is an amazing book. And I was very surprised at myself for putting it in second place. And it may have been recency bias that led me to put the book in the first position that I did, but it was also a truly astounding book. And that was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo, excuse me. This was the last book I read for the BookTube prize. And again, I was afraid I was not going to like this book because I had heard that it has sort of an experimental style as well. There is a lack of capitalization and punctuation in this book, and I can find that pretentious and frustrating at times. But you guys know I loved Ducks Newburyport last year, and I ended up loving Girl, Woman, Other as well. So this is interconnected short stories from the point of view of Black women from Great Britain for the most part. And so all of these women are connected in some way, although you may not know how that connection works in the middle of the story. It may not come until later on in another story that you finally figure out the connections, which I thought was truly fun, a fun exploration of the connections between these women. It addresses themes of racism, colonialism, motherhood, feminism, gender, and sexuality, all of the topics. Basically, the themes in this book are what really took it over the top for me. It addressed so many themes that I think are important, and was done in a way that I found immensely readable. It was really, really interesting throughout. I read this book at the same time I was reading The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor, and you can see how Bernadine Evaristo was perhaps influenced by that book. I think there's a lot of parallels between the two books, and I find that really interesting because they're written in much different time periods, but there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of parallel things happening in both books. This book also reminds me of Olive Kittredge, which you guys know I loved. I really love the exploration of women's lives in these interconnected short stories where there's an overall broad narrative arc. Not necessarily narrative arc, maybe that's not the word I want to say, but there's a broad theme, like basically connecting stories to each other, and I found that with this book. I thought the writing style was unique and it felt fresh to me and innovative, which I liked. It didn't feel pretentious to me, which is what I worried about. And so I would say that this book just knocked my socks off. And honestly, I love it. I loved women talking, but I felt that this book really speaks to the times that we're living in and was so relevant. Not to say Women Talking wasn't relevant, but this book felt so relevant to me in 2020 that it edged out Women Talking just a little bit to put itself in the #1 position. And so how did my ranking match up with the prize, the winner of the prize? Well, Girl, Woman, Other won the #1 spot. So, and Women Talking was #3, and 10 minutes 38 seconds in the Strange World was #2. So I clearly do not, I did not mesh with the other judges in my opinion about 10 minutes 38 seconds, but I feel extremely pleased that Girl, Woman, Other won the prize and that Women Talking came in 3rd place. I feel vindicated in my judgments of these books. So I simply loved participating in the BookTube prize judging this year in 2020 as I did in 2019. I want to thank Robert at Hordes again for all of his hard work and putting this prize together and keeping all of us judges on track and keeping the whole thing organized. It's a tremendous amount of work. And with adding the nonfiction prize this year, it just, I'm sure it wasn't just a doubling of work. It was exponential. But it's such a fun thing to be involved in. And I just want to encourage anybody out there that's listening to this video that's interested in this to please join us next year in 2021. It is so much fun, and it really is an opportunity to read books that maybe you wouldn't otherwise pick up, and it's an opportunity to interact with a great bunch of people, all reading the same books and all thinking about the same books, and it's just a fun thing to participate in, and I love it. So thanks again, Robert, and thanks to everybody for watching. I will talk with you later.